Good evening. Welcome to the Bedminster Township. This is our regularly scheduled Township Committee meeting for February 6th. Recognize that we have a full attendance of the Township Committee here in person. We've got a whole mess of people here in the room with us. It's been a long time. Welcome, everyone. And we've got some more folks attending remotely via Zoom. We do have a special presentation coming up in a little bit in the meeting. First, we'll have the Open Public Meetings Act statement. Ms. Ray.
Yes, Mayor. Adequate notice of this meeting to the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News Somerville, Burnsville News Whippany, and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building on January 10th, 2023.
Great, thank you. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so as many of you know, we have a special guest, special presentation this evening. We've done this several times in the past. For the first time, we're doing it in person after COVID. And that's a presentation by Yolanta Madiars from JCP&L. However, before we start with that presentation, as we start every Bedminster Township Committee meeting, we have open up the microphone for public comment. So if there are public comments not related to the JCP&L presentation, you can come up to the microphone, leave your name and give your public comment. If you are participating via Zoom, take your cursor, scroll down to the bottom of the page, click on participants. Then you'll have the opportunity to click on raise hand. If you click on raise hand, you'll be admitted into queue for public comment. No, come up. Get the microphone.
To the microphone. You can turn the microphone around. Yeah.
Name and address, please.
Michael Roden, Spencer Lane, Bedminster Township. Mr. Mayor, Township Committee people, I want to thank you for continuing the practice of offering public comments at the beginning of a meeting. I'm here tonight to tell you about the wonderful dog park we have in Bedminster. I've been lucky to have a dog the past year and a half using the park, and it's just fantastic. The Township Public Works does a fantastic job picking up the trash that's put out in the receptacles and providing the pickup bags for picking up the business. I'm here tonight basically because I do have concerns on the dead trees there. I know you're into budget season. I don't know whether this is part of the budgeting, removing the trees, but there are dead trees within the enclosed area and outside the closed area. And the fear is that an ice storm will come, tree will take down the fence, the park will be closed for months. So I do not know whether or not that is something that will be discussed in budgets or whether it's on the agenda, whether the committee knows about the issue of the dead trees and when they will potentially be removed. Want to thank the Public Works for putting the grit down. It was a little difficult at the start because it's a dirty material. It has taken time for it to wash out with rainstorms, but it is much more usable now than the mud slick that was there. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of other things, but I can't bring them up. I used to be real good at this stuff.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah, so it's basically the trees that are an issue, and the park itself is very large, and that is one of the best parts about it. People come from all over Somerset County to use the park. I shudder when I go to the park to think that a mall could have gone in there if it wasn't for a township committee years ago purchasing the land, another township committee developing the land into green acres. The park, kind of needs, we've heard that, they're going to reseed or not reseed, and I know that there's the gardens coming in, whether there'll be any water available towards the park so people can fill and, instead of bringing from home water. I would think it's fantastic if you could expand the park so you could close down sections and still keep it the same size. I have no idea what the current plan is for the use on either side of the dog park. But the park itself, I just smile every time I go there and see the use that the park is getting. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to say.
Okay,
And I
thank
want
you,
to thank
Mr. Roden. We've had conversations with DPW about improvements to the dog park, reseeding. We may have to take some sections, give them a rest for a couple months, let the sod take form, and then switch some things around. So DPW is constantly monitoring the dog park. I'm sure they're aware of the trees. I don't have any specific information about taking down.
No, I would
trees.
just comment that it was purposely set up to encompass the trees within the park so that you could get shade. That was one of the comments that some of the users were asking for, because it's fairly open there. The fact that they're dead trees obviously is not a good thing, so we'll take a look at that. But it was created with trees to be inside the park with a reason, but obviously dead trees is a different issue, so we'll take a look at that.
On that note, if there is any grants or anything that can be applied for to provide a shade structure such as there are over in Burnt Mills Road, I think that would be really beneficial. And like I asked, I don't know whether there's space that the park can move left or right on those pieces of land that are next to it to enable the park to still be the same size while it's being reseeded and regenerated.
We're looking into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Can somebody put that chair around and the microphone down on that table for me?
Sure.
I got
Cover it right now.
Hi, I'm back.
Hi. Mrs. Rogers, please, just so everyone knows, your name and address for the record.
Of course. Patricia Rogers, 220 Union Grove Road. I'm in Bedminster, and I've been a resident for 37 and a half years and lived in the same house for 37 and a half years. I'm a concerned resident. I've been before you people before, maybe not the same people, but before this board before. I stated the last time I was here that I was concerned. Actually, I was opposed to the municipal Bedminster allowing the cider mill bar at up on 206. 3540 Route 206, Block 6, Lot 102. Actually, they have two lots in there, which combines to make what the original application was for, and it's in the R10 zone. The last time I was here, I was told that the municipal didn't have any noise ordinance, and that it was up to me to prove that it was objectionable. And I have here police regulations, ordinance 3-5 on noise. And it says, no person shall make, participate in making, or cause to be made any offensive or unnecessary noise, causing undue annoyance to or disturbing the comfort, rest, or repose of any person. This section shall include, but is not included, but is not limited to, noise emitted by any machinery, animals, radio receiving set, phonograph, or other sound-producing instrument, device, or apparatus. Now, we were told that the committee doesn't handle noise complaints and that we should talk to Mr. Coates or go to court. However, the Land Use Board Resolution Number 21-012 decided July the 1st, August 2021, memorialized August the 5th, 2021. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. The applicant agreed that it would still be subject to the special use permit process for music and event days and be subject to the requirements of the special use permit and future special use permits to manage and control the operations of the music to the satisfaction of the Township Committee. Page 6 of this ordinance, it says, the music is an activity which will continue to be governed under the jurisdiction of the Township Committee by special use permit, and the committee will determine the standards and requirements with respect to music. So, you people are responsible for the music at the Burnt Mill Cider Bar. And on the permit, special use permit, that was signed by the mayor, dated 8/22/22. Burnt Mill Cider. The permit says that on holidays, the music is to be allowed from 12 till 6. Our complaint was registered with the police on Columbus Day, October the 10th, on a Monday. And our complaint was after 7 o'clock to the police who came to our door, and the music continued until 9 o'clock. So they have violated the permit, and I'm asking you people what you're going to do about it.
Mrs. Rogers, I spoke to Mr. Coates a few months ago, and he said that he had left messages with you.
Yes,
And he was expecting a phone call. You never called him back?
that's correct. That is
So you haven't
correct.
called them back. And he also mentioned that there had been a call to the ABC regarding an allegation of a traffic accident that was attributed to the cidery.
Good
And I believe
heavens.
your son had mentioned that at a previous meeting
To ABC?
to the Alcohol Beverage Commission.
I don't know.
I did call the
Okay. Because you came here before this committee and mentioned that there had been an accident, and you attributed the accident to the cider operations, which was actually, we then asked the police department to look into it. There was an accident on 206 at the time you mentioned, but it was not attributed at all to the cider. And it was just a few days later that apparently someone called the ABC. The ABC then reached out to Burnt Mill Cider, saying that there had been this call, there was an investigation that was then precipitated, which was then resolved because it was not associated with it. So it appears that they've made some outreach. They've been trying to work with you to hear your concerns.
I have a response to that.
About the noise.
I have a response to that,
But you have a response to Mr. Coates or to us?
to you.
Okay.
Okay. In this resolution that I'm referring to, and I got a copy of this a few days after I saw you. Mr. Coates described the operations, it's on page 3, and he explained that as a result of the pandemic, well, I shouldn't get into that. Wait a minute. He explained that he responded to complaints about noise from music and found that if the drums were not used for the bands, that there were fewer complaints. He also found that if the music was aimed away from 206 and towards the trees and hillside in the back of the property, as opposed to across from 206, that the music was less noticeable to the residential neighbors. He confirmed that he will continue to do that in the future and that he will be responsive to the complaints about music.
So Mrs. Rogers,
Well,
he did reach out to you
my point is,
and trying to be responsive.
but my point is
So-
that the municipal committee is responsible for the music. It says so in this resolution. And it should be not be up to me to bring Mr. Coates around to where he's already acknowledged that he's had many complaints and he would not use the drums and he would direct the music to the back of the property on October the 10th. That was not the case.
Have you had more incidents since October?
No. This permit that you've got, this permit that you've got is a 1-year permit,
Yes.
and it's from September the 19th to September of 22 to September the 18th of 23. It's a 1-year permit.
We're going through the land use board filing application, and, well, he just wants to plant apples. You know, he just wants to have a tasting deal. And, you know, you know, we're gonna be responsive to our neighbors, and we're not gonna make a lot of noise. You don't believe it. I don't believe it. What's the point of talking to him? We're here for the people who issued the permit for him to make noise. He violated the permit. And we're talking about, oh, you called the ABC, he called you. He violated the permit.
That's all I have to say. So I'm asking you what you're going to do, if anything.
We've had conversations with Mr. Coates. We had asked him to reach out to you to hear your complaint directly. And if there's things that he could do to, once again, to direct the music away from you or to stop the music completely.
But he's already said that he was going to do that, and he didn't do it. So what's my point?
I was not there on October 10th. The police,
You have it in writing.
you have what in writing?
That he said he was gonna, the music at 206.
I do not know what he did on October
All right.
10th.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
That's
once
fine.
again,
That's fine. But we called the police. We had the body cam from the policeman, a copy of it. so I could bring that to the meeting and I could show you what he said, that he,
What time it was?
So Mrs. Rogers, do you have no intention of speaking with Mr. Coates so that he can hear your
We
complaint?
have a complaint on the report.
but our complaint also,
Okay, so you filed something with the court?
it also says here that the date of activities will be confined to Wednesdays and Fridays, 4 to 9, Saturdays, 12 to 9, Sundays and holidays, 12 to 6. We complained after 7 o'clock. The music carried on until 9. The drums, I was sitting in my living room. The windows were closed, the doors were closed. I was watching television, and I jumped up off of the couch, and I said, "What in the heck is that?" And I yelled down to my son. He said, "I've already called the police." And then they appeared at our door. So I have plenty of evidence that this has occurred. I don't know. It was not permitted. It was on a holiday after 6 o'clock, which is not permitted.
Chief Bernardo, can you get the incident report over to Attorney Bellardo? And John, draft a letter to the Cidery and say that there's obviously a apparent violation of special use permit and ask for some response from Mr. Coates to deal with it.
Will do, Mayor.
Thank you
This
for
is a
your,
residential neighborhood. Look at a residential neighborhood for 35 years. They've been a bar with live music and food trucks and porta potties. It's right there behind our back deck. We're supposed to be,
We're a mile away, and I could hear it. Mile away. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you,
And I
Mrs.
hope-
Rogers.
I hope that you do some action on it, because I have a valid complaint.
And have you had an issue since you came to us in October, or you came to us shortly after October? We spoke with Mr. Coates. Has there been an incident since then?
No, but this is the winter, late fall and early winter. He wouldn't have outdoor music. It's only and I have a record of a prior permit that you gave him, which specified certain dates, but it was all in the spring.
the music at 206 was supposed to be faint. At 206, we're way behind 206, faint. It was not faint.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. And we'll make sure you get a copy of whatever gets sent out to the Cidery.
Thank you.
It is still public comment. So if there's any other members of the public wish to make a comment, once again, either in person or via Zoom. Once again, via Zoom, bring your cursor down to the bottom, click on participants, click on raise hand. Ms. Ray, anyone else?
I have not seen any members from the public yet.
Seeing none, we will begin our special presentation. Yolanta Matiars from JCP&L. Yolanta, if you don't mind coming up to...
Sure, would you like me to move this so I'm not,
No, we'd rather actually have you speaking directly.
I don't want to, you know.
You're fine.
back-
You're fine.
Oh,
Yeah, have your back to us so you
We've
can
already
talk to
gone through
them.
the back issue.
Yes.
All right. We have that PowerPoint.
Yes, we do. Just give me 1 second.
Very good. Very good.
So Yolanta, before you start, so
Yes.
what we've done in the past, we've had several times where we've brought in our JCP&L reps to come talk to the Township Committee. We started opening these meetings up to a larger group because there had been complaints
Yes.
about longstanding power outages, intermittent power outages, and I think one of the larger ones we had was when Carol Bianchi came and she brought an engineer, actually walked through some of the elements that JCP&L was experiencing that was creating the outages and the remedial measures that JCP&L had in store. And we had seen some of those measures implemented and some improvement. But within the last few months, it appears that we're back to intermittent outages, some longer term outages. There's been some weather issues, there's been tree issues, there's animal issues. But we want to just put it all on the table, and we invite the public out. And Yolanta will turn to you unless Colin
No,
want to add anything onto it.
Perfect summary. So, and I think Rob is going to bring up the presentation that you want to share with everybody.
Yes,
So-
absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you having me here, Mayor. So thank you.
Thank you.
And good evening to you and to members of the Township Committee, and good evening to all of you. And I really appreciate you coming, and I hope that you find all of this useful. And I don't know, Mayor, if you'd like to open this up to the public for any commentary or questions.
Well, let's do it at the end.
I'm happy to do it.
Let's do it at the end, and first maybe you just walk through your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Robin will advance the screens, which are going to be up on the TV monitor, so everyone in the audience can see.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, excellent. So I'll just tell you when I want you to go to the next one. Okay, excellent. And Mayor, you are correct. There have been many improvements that we've made over the past couple of years. And I have some pie charts and some bar graphs that'll demonstrate what has happened over the past couple of years. And I will also explain what's been happening with the intermittent outages, with the flickers, the lights blinking that you experience from time to time. And I'm glad that somebody brought up the word trees before. Everyone is suffering from what the emerald ash borer has been doing to our lovely trees over the last couple of years. Of course, the power company is not immune, and that's precisely the issue that we are dealing with largely. So let's get started. The first slide, what we're showing you here in the first slide is basically the Hills service territory, first and foremost, because it seems like the Hills have been experiencing more of the issues than other parts of Bedminster. There are other parts that have also experienced some of the issues, but it seems like the Hills has been the epicenter, and I'll show you why. So the first slide is the Hills. When we get into the second slide, that is the Hills. I don't know what's going on here on the PowerPoint.
Can't see. Sorry, I'm working two computers at the same time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay, and if you can go to the next slide, I'll show you, this is our first substation. This is the PPAC substation that feeds into Bedminster from the north. It services PPAC and then it comes into Bedminster. And it services a little tiny portion of the Hills, but it does service a good portion of the northern part of Bedminster, north above the Hills. Now, the next slide, please. This is the Chambers Brook, which feeds in from the south, and it feeds a lot of the Hills. Number 3, the next slide. The Greater Crossroads. Greater Crossroads feeds in from the west. There are many Bedminster residents outside of the Hills on Greater Crossroads, and then there's a small section of the Hills that's on that substation as well. Next slide, please. That's the Somerset substation that feeds in from Bridgewater and comes in into the Hills as well. Next slide. And finally, we have our Dead River substation that feeds in from Warren Township, comes in through a little bit of Bernards, and it feeds into the Hills as well. Now, next slide, please. Now, this next slide, what this is showing is what those bars stand for. The blue bar is the year 2020. The orange bar is the year 2021, and the gray bar at the end is the year 2022. So what this graph is showing, if you look on the side, those are the number of minutes that the outage lasted. So in other words, from the beginning of the outage until the repairs were complete and customers were restored. So if we're looking at the year 2020, at least for the greater Crossroads substation, which those first 3 bars, that's the greater Crossroads. I don't know if you can see that. It's so tiny, but that's what it is. That's this one right here. If you look at what we had going on in 2020, there has been substantial improvement toward 2021 and now toward 2022. So what that is demonstrating is that right now in 2022, for that year, we've experienced about 55 minutes worth of outages throughout that entire year. If you look at the second, that is the PPAC substation. The PPAC substation has gotten increasingly better as each year has come and gone. When we're here in 2022, it's looking like we've experienced about an hour and a half worth of outages for the entire year. Now, here in the Somerset substation, which is the next one, we experienced a very large increase in or relatively large compared to what preceded in 2021 and 2020. And we've prepared a pie chart that we're going to look at in the next couple of slides to explain exactly why that happened. And the Somerset outages on the Somerset substation, those outages are pretty much representative of what's going on in the entire territory. And it's basically related to trees. We're getting a lot of outages from trees from off of the right-of-way falling onto our equipment. And it's a dangerous thing. It's not only dangerous for our equipment, it's dangerous for your cars, for your homes, and it's something that's happening. And it's because there are so many diseased trees in our territory. Now, the next one is the Chambers Brook. The Chambers Brook appears to have jumped since 2021, but it is still below the levels of 2020. And my engineer did not do a pie chart for that one, but I went into my GIS mapping system and I did a little analysis of my own that I will share with you in a moment. The next one is the Dead River Sub. And I'll spare you the suspense. I do have a pie chart on that, but the majority of those outages were due to 2 separate incidents in which we had animal contact with our equipment. That's something that we can't help. We try to mitigate animal contact with equipment via vegetation management, because if we're taking out the trees and we're taking out their habitat, then they're not as likely to go running across our wires and get zapped. I mean, squirrels are the #1 animal that causes the most trouble for us at JCP&L. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a very good representation of what's happening, at least throughout my service territory, at least around here where we are in a very heavily vegetated, heavily wooded area. If you take a look at the blue portion of the pie, you will see that 48% of all outages that occurred in 2022 were caused by trees falling from off of the right-of-way. And the reason I say that is we are permitted to trim trees and to take trees from within the right-of-way. That's where we have an easement, and that's where our equipment is. Off of the right-of-way is generally your property, it's private property, occasionally it's government property, but it's not our property, and we don't necessarily have an easement there. So we're not permitted to go onto private property and take trees, even though they're dangerous and they are threatening our equipment. So 48%, and that's when you saw that bar graph right before the slide before this, when we were looking at that, and you see that very large gray line, this is the reason. Now, the trees from in the right-of-way where we cut, that is, I believe that is the yellow portion of the pie. That's that tiny little portion right there. 3% of outages were caused by trees from on the right-of-way where we do trim. Now, another issue that we have, which I touched on before, is the gray portion of the pie, and that is animal contact. So animal contact contributed to 19% of outages during 2022. And the reason I take animal contact and I kind of put it in the same context as trees is because, well, the animals live in the trees. And the more trees we have surrounding our equipment, the more animals we're going to have that will make contact with that equipment and cause extensive damage. As I said, number one, squirrels, number two, birds. But the squirrels are the worst. The squirrels, especially in late fall, when we have our first frost, when they're a little bit cold before they go into their hibernating mode, they like to hang around on the top of our transformers because they're warm. So they like to keep warm. And when they're scurrying around on those lines, trying to find food and get from place to place, get from tree to tree, what ends up happening is, you'll see a tree on a line. It's not getting zapped, but the minute it tries to go up to another line and it's still touching that line below, it will get zapped. And that's what causes the outages. That's what causes the problem. That's what causes the damage to our equipment. When we find an animal, and we usually do, that's how we know that 19% is caused by animals. The other portion of that pie, the significant portion of that pie, is equipment failure. So approximately a quarter of outages are due to equipment failure. Now, why do we experience equipment failure? Well, because we have an overhead system. Even those of you who live in neighborhoods where your electricity is underground, all of that electricity is fed to you through an overhead system. Our transmission system is all overhead. And what happens, when you're exposed to the elements, things start cracking, things start becoming deteriorated. We have the overhead equipment that's dealing with freezing and heat, lightning strikes potentially that don't cause outages immediately will cause damage to that equipment. And sometime in the future, when there's a brisk wind, that lightning strike that occurred maybe months before will cause that equipment to fail. So that's what we mean when we're talking about equipment failure. So what we did in 2021 is we installed failed circuit indicators. I'm going to read that for a minute. Failed circuit indicators, so that they are sensors, so that we could tell if there's some issue with the circuit. It will alert us in our line shop so we can go out there and replace whatever type of equipment there's an issue with. In 2023, this year, we are going to be replacing our lightning surge meters. So these are lightning surge arresters, they're called. I keep forgetting that word. It's a lightning surge arrestor. It kind of dissipates the lightning so it doesn't cause the damage to the equipment. So we are upgrading that. And this is all being done to prevent the equipment failure that's about a quarter of your outages are due to. Now, if you want to go to the next slide, this is what I was talking about the Dead River sub. All of that blue, animal contact. Those were literally 2 outages that did last a long time because we had substantial damage from at 2 different times, 2 animal contacts, and that's what happened there. Now with the greater crossroads, I took a look at that. No, actually the Chambers Brook. And we don't have a pie chart on this, but I did do a little bit of an analysis myself, just so that you know what happened, because there was a line failure in about October that took out probably 3,500 people for a short period of time. And so that line failure, that is not something that we necessarily know why the line failed. We know exactly what failed. We know what equipment needs to be replaced, but we don't necessarily know what happened. As I said before, we're an overhead system. We're always exposed to the elements. Sometimes the equipment ages, and even with the best vigilance, you can't catch everything, even though we are taking measures to ensure that we are going to be able to catch substantially everything we need to catch in order to make sure that our system is resilient. Next slide, please. So momentary outages, because I know that there's a lot of talk about momentary outages. lately, as you saw a moment ago, we talked about what the issues are. We have a lot of tree limbs coming down, we have a lot of trees coming down, and sometimes we have animal contact. Sometimes when during a situation where one of those things occur, there is not such substantial damage that we can't switch customers onto another circuit in order to get you back into power almost immediately. So that is really what you're experiencing. When you're experiencing the light flicker, your refrigerator telling you that there's an outage, but then there's not an outage, all your clocks being reset, what that is essentially is JCP&L remotely switching you to another power source so that you only momentarily lose power. The alternative to that, unfortunately, if there is more extensive damage, is that you will have an outage that'll last much longer than the flicker or the 5 minutes. So that's what those momentary outages are. We have this equipment out there in the field, we call them reclosers, and so either a troubleman is able to do it manually, or at times we can actually switch remotely, and we try to switch remotely as much as possible, and that is the first line of defense. Whenever we sense that there's an outage, switching or an attempt to switch occurs immediately to get you back in power. If we can't, then we have to send out a crew and actually make the repairs, because then we know it's just more substantial than simply switching. Next slide. So we do have preventative maintenance programs. We do our circuit inspections. Circuit inspections are on a 5-year cycle. We're looking at every single circuit to make sure that everything is in good working order. We have wood pole inspections. We inspect our poles once every 10 years. We go around our entire service territory and we either replace poles that need replacing, or we support them. We help to reinforce them. So if you ever see those guide wires coming off of poles, that's what that's there for. It's to reinforce it, to ensure that it doesn't go anywhere. And we also implement infrared scanning or thermography, where we have the gentleman in the photograph right there on that slide is holding one of those thermographs. Thermography gives us the ability to see faults that you wouldn't ordinarily see with the naked eye. So we're employing this technology to be able to find any faults in the system so we can fix them before they become larger problems. Next slide, please. So this is our inspection and maintenance schedule, and I know that this was a question that we had about inspections. So if you look at each, it's hard for me to see that from the side, so I'm gonna get back on my computer here. If you'll bear with me for a moment, it keeps shutting down on me. So I want to go through this very carefully. So this is showing you the substation, and that's the circuit number. And next to that, you have something that's called OH, that's overhead. So we inspected the overhead on the Chambersbrook in 2022. That gets inspected every 5 years. The UG, that's underground, that gets inspected every 4 years. So if you're living in the hills and your electric service is underground, you are inspected every 4 years. We inspected Chambersbrook in 2022. Dead River was inspected in 2021. Greater Crossroads 2022. PPAC 2021 and Somerset 2021. Of course, if there is ever an issue with a transformer pad, if there's ever an issue with any of our equipment, we ask that you call the company. You call the 1-800 number and make a report. We have been out there, we have received reports about issues with some of the transformer covers, and what the workers did, what the technicians did, was apply hot patches to some of those holes or areas that were rusted through. And the reason we're doing that temporarily is our company, like any other company, we are experiencing a bit of a supply chain.
Yes, I'm just gonna put, oh shoot, you don't have to be on.
I'm muted by accident.
Somebody evaded mute.
She unmuted back.
It's all set. So we can't replace all of them as much as we would like to. We replace the worst ones whenever we have the opportunity and whenever we have the material to do so. But if we can't do that because we can't obtain it, what we will do is we will do a hot patch, and we will at least make it safe, because we want to make sure that nothing is getting into those transformers, nothing's getting into those boxes. So if you ever see anything like that, we really appreciate if you would please let us know so we can get out there and take a look at it, because it's just going to be an outage that we're going to have to, resolve anyway. So it's better for us to get out there in advance, resolve the issue, and then not have to deal with it until we can go back and actually replace them. Forestry is also on a cycle, and if you see here, we have been trimming those trees, Chambersbrook, Dead River, 2020. Forestry we do on a 4-year cycle. However, if there's ever an issue, if you ever see a low-hanging limb or a tree that looks like it's going to come down on our property, on our equipment, and it happens to be within the right-of-way, even slightly off the right-of-way, we ask you to report those things. If you report those things, even if you report them to your governing body, they'll report them to me, and I will get forestry out there to take a look at this, because we would rather take preventative measures rather than having to deal with outages after the fact. That's just, bottom line. That's why we're doing all of this. Next slide, please. So, thank you. Additional reliability programs, vegetation management. That is so important. We live in the woods. That's the way it is. My service territory is very heavily wooded. I have a couple of towns that are in our service territory that may not be as heavily vegetated, but unfortunately, or fortunately, because it is beautiful, we do have those issues here, and those trees, they do cause a lot of our outages. So we do complete all of this on a 4-year cycle. Hazard trees, when we have a hazard tree, we can remove it with your permission if it's on your property. The overhang is always removed. Sometimes I know people have complained about the way that, things are cut, but we cut them because we have to cut them that way. We have to absolutely clear the lines of any vegetation, because any vegetation that's near a line, even if it is not necessarily above the line, but next to, a strong wind is going to push that vegetation right onto the line, and it may cause a problem. So we do tend to get rid of all of that. And then, of course, we are removing ash. It's not. But I understand. I get it. Okay, so we also have a vegetation management circuit performance program. So for the circuits that are worst performing, and they are not here in Bedminster, these circuits are not worst performing, but we have the bottom 12% of circuits that don't perform very well. We do additional vegetation management. We have these issues, I think, further out in Hunterdon County where there are more trees. Even more than we have here. And so we do have these programs in place that we will even take trees off of the right-of-way. And this is important because a lot of these circuits, they do run for several miles, so sometimes it's not the tree that's right next to you. It may be a tree that's several miles away that we're taking out, perhaps even in a different county. And that's what we've been doing for the last, for the last number of years. So we will be back here. And again, if there's ever a problem, if there's ever a tree that you believe should be taken, please get in touch with your governing body, or please give a call to the company. We will come out and look at it. Next slide, please. Okay, so the additional reliability programs, these are the worst performing circuit programs. If you ever find yourself on a worst performing circuit, you're not on one, then we we do additional work to improve the circuits. So we are always working to improve circuits. And the last slide, please, well, the second to last slide. This is our service restoration process. And I wanted to show you this slide just so everyone is aware and everyone understands of what happens during a widespread outage, the type that we had after Sandy or after Hurricane Isaias in 2019. This is basically the process that we follow in any very large storm that affects a good portion of our area. The first step during any restoration process is to isolate and make safe. We have to send our crews out there to make sure we're de-energizing these wires, we're making them safe, we're making sure that there are no trees dangling, and we're also assessing the damage. And I have to say here, and I did come bearing gifts, but I left them in my car, but I will give them to you, to the business administrator, to leave in the municipal building for you. It's about safety, because safety is really our priority. I understand that it's frustrating when you're out there and you're looking at all of our trucks driving by, and it doesn't appear that people are doing anything, but they are. They are making the area safe. We are not going to send in our employees, and we're not going to allow the residents to come out in an area that's not safe. And I need to tell you, if you ever see a wire, don't assume that it's dead. Don't assume that it's not energized because it's not moving. It may very well be energized, or it may arc, it may become energized. If you ever come upon a wire, you have to stay at least 30 feet away. And that's not only because of the wire, it's also because the ground around it can become energized. They are very dangerous. And we are sending our technicians, who are very well trained, into relatively dangerous situations. We want them to be careful. We want them to take their time. We don't want them to jeopardize your health, welfare, or safety, or theirs. We want all of us to get through the storm in one piece. They also need to assess the damage, because there's no way that you can have a crew go out and have absolutely every single piece of material and equipment that they're going to need to make those repairs. We need somebody to go out there and assess, what do you need? What kind of crew do you need? Who do you need? Which technicians are we going to send out there? What kind of material are we going to bring with us? We can't bring the whole shop on the truck. So we have these assessors go out there and look at everything, and then we formulate a plan of action. And that's when we start sending people out there to start the restoration process. So no, it doesn't happen immediately, but these are steps that need to happen in order for this to be orderly and for it to occur in as short a time period as possible. The next step is we repair high voltage lines, because those are the lines that are bringing power to everyone else. And then we also restore essential functions. And we also then restore the critical facilities, the police stations, the fire departments, the hospitals. Those are all of our critical facilities. The warming centers, if this happens to happen in the middle of winter, we need to make sure that everybody has a place to go. We need to make sure that emergency services can get to you. So first we have to restore them. Then we repair main feeder and main distribution lines. After that, we restore the highest areas with the highest number of customers. So if you happen to be on a circuit with 50 other people, you're not going to be restored quicker than the circuit that has 500 people on it. So that's the way we do. It's called priority restoration, and those are basically the priorities. And we work our way down until the very last customer is back in power. Next slide, please. Now, this is about the pad-mounted equipment. We have a lot of pad-mounted transformers, especially in the hills. We need to maintain a certain clearance away from these transformers. I've been looking at some of them on Google Maps and Google Earth, and I can tell you there are bushes that are growing a lot, very much too close to these transformers. The problem with that is they do degrade the box, the metal, they do. And that is an issue. So planting, putting any type of stone around that, it will attract animals. If there happens to be a little hole, you will know that there will be a rodent that's going to make a bigger hole. So it's best to keep plantings away from that. It's best to keep the clearances, and we have actually a manual online that you can look at. It's on our website that will show you. If you're planting or digging anywhere around a transformer box, you have to call the call before you dig, the one call system, to make sure that you're not going to hit a line, because it's dangerous. And, we ask that you avoid planting or installing posts directly over any cables. So once you do call one call, when they tell you where those cables are, please try and avoid them. That's it for my presentation. Do you have
Okay.
any questions?
Couple of questions, yes.
Yes.
Unless-
Right. No, so what I was going to say is what we'll do first, we'll go through the Township Committee Q&A, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Ms. Maziar, a quick question. I was looking at the Sadie data.
Yes,
So I see the trend is not our friend on Somerset, Chambersburg, or Dead River.
correct.
They're all, I think we averaged less than 150 minutes of outage previously in 2019 and earlier.
Yes,
We're at 150 minutes or more on each one of those.
yes.
I know you showed us some of the causes of the outages, but what can be done to bring that number down?
Vegetation management is very, very important in this case, because a lot of our outages are coming from those trees off the right of way. So the vegetation management, that is, I think that's the most important thing that we can do. We don't have a great number of equipment failures, but we do have a great number of simply damage from the elements, from trees and from the animals that live there. So vegetation management is really key, and off right-of-way vegetation management.
Meaning stuff that's on a private piece of private property?
Yes.
So in other municipalities, have you notified those folks, or what is the process to make sure that those trees are being taken or removed from those lines?
Generally, in those towns, we do have conversations with the governing bodies to let them know what's happening. This is the first opportunity that I've had to really dig into those substations in Bedminster. And, I understand that the Sadie data, it could be better. Of course it could. 0 minutes of outages is ideal, of
Right.
course. But you are doing pretty well here in Bedminster. Although I do understand that those
They might disagree out there.
those
but-
two substations, those two substations are problematic, but we are installing that new equipment that I talked about, the sensors for the lightning,
Right.
the dispersers,
Right.
and also the circuit detectors, the circuit sensors as well.
So are there addresses, is there a database, is there something we can act upon so that residents can be notified, hey, you may want to look at these trees, they're overhanging the lines? Or how do we get to that next stage where we can actually improve the performance? Otherwise, these trees are just going to continue to come down the lines.
That's absolutely true. I can tell you, in other towns, they employ foresters. I don't know if you employ a forester who actually looks at these things and determines which trees are dead or not. We can have our foresters go through town potentially while they're on their route and take a look at anything that looks dangerous. I know that occasionally our crews will report things that they see that look like they're going to potentially be a hazard.
Right.
But, it's funny. I had a tree come down in another town. This was a tree, it was a pine, it was about 100 feet tall. You would never imagine that this thing would ever come down. It didn't look diseased, it didn't look sick. It was just planted in a very wet area. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, it wasn't visible to even a trained eye. Pines tend to have very short roots, and it uprooted because of just rainy conditions last year, and it toppled over and took out 4 poles, and it did a lot of damage. So these are things that need to be looked at. Yes.
And I would ask if you do have a forester who could go around in a more disciplined fashion, because doing the one-offs is great, but it sounds like we really need a program, or you need to put a program in place to go look at these towns, to look at the trees, and then report. And we can assist with respect to notifying residents if need be, but these are your assets. And, we're.
Right, but The
No,
trees are on private property.
But you,
And sometimes, look, right now, I think we've pretty much convinced people that we need to do vegetation management, and we are getting far less pushback for the vegetation management. In years past, a lot of people were not happy. And I don't know how we go about going on private property and telling people that they need to take down trees.
So on this issue, a couple of years ago, and I think this actually followed a similar presentation, JCP&L and other utilities petitioned BPU to expand the right-of-way, I think whether it was from 15 to 20, and Committeeman Hickey actually went down to Trenton,
yes,
and you testified on
Yes.
behalf of expanding the right-of-way so that we could, well, certainly the utilities could do more expansive
tree
clearing.
trimming, yep.
Did that go through? Did BPU
I don't believe
change
so.
that rule?
Whatever right-of-way we have, I believe it's the right-of-way that we've had, and that is the right-of-way that we are permitted to act within. And whatever right-of-way there is, we will take trees right out of that right-of-way. Any hazard trees are removed immediately. If we see a dead tree, it's gone.
So, Robin, if you could, real quick, go back, while we're still in Q&A, go back to the slide that shows all 5 substations that lead into the hills. I think it's important that the folks in the audience and those who are participating, once again, by Zoom, can look and see, especially in the hills, where their power comes from which substation. So for example, the PPAC substation up on 206.
It's hard to see. It's hard to see.
So there's one community in the hills, I'm trying to think if that is, Jeff Leonard, is that yours?
That's in our general area. It's Wood Duck Pond, Four Oaks, and that's most of it.
So Wood Duck Pond is fed from the PPAC substation.
Yes.
But the surrounding neighborhoods come in off of Chambers Brook.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily geographically
No.
sensical,
No.
right? The way the hills was built and the way the energy was brought in, your neighbor could have power and you may not, because you're being fed by a different substation. So looking at that, certainly on 206, there's a lot of trees along 206. In fact, I think for a couple of weeks, there was a tree that was lying down on one of the lines. Took a little
There was
bit
an
to get.
outage last year, right, on 206?
Correct.
Yep.
For that.
And so an incident along 206 may impact the folks, Jeff, in the Wood Duck Pond area, and no one else.
Right.
So where those tree situations or animal situations are, they can be remote
Yes.
and affect your neighborhood, but not your neighbors.
Right.
And we've had this discussion about tree clearing. If there's anything the township can do, we'll certainly support it. But it's also getting the word out. But looking at some of these other lines, they may not be as tree heavy. The Somerset Station, perhaps the Dead River, Greater Crossroads is relatively open. Coming,
The Dead River does come through a portion, and that's where the animal.
that's up on the hill on
Yes,
Berners.
yes,
Yeah,
and that's
right.
where the animal contact occurred, actually, because I had the address and I took a look at Google Maps. So it was not in Bedminster, but it affected
And
Bedminster.
the same thing with the Somerset outage, right? That occurred a couple of months ago.
Yes, it did. It
Right.
occurred down in Branchburg,
Down in
actually.
Branchburg, right.
Yes.
You had a tree on the line or a vehicle accident?
It was a carpool accident.
Yeah,
That was that cold day?
yes.
In your,
Yeah.
in your presentation, you were talking about upgrades to your system so that you can have, if one goes down, you can flick a switch and then bring power
Yes.
to the other substation. We've got 5 substations here that feed into the Hills grid. Do you foresee a day where all of these 5 substations will be able to be repetitive of one another? In other words, if one goes down, the other four can feed?
That's not a question that I can answer. I mean, that's a question for planning and engineering into the future. And I don't even know, even if he were here tonight, if he can answer that question. Because if we're still in planning phases, they won't, they can't really talk about it. It's not really public information. So I really can't answer that question about whether there will be redundancy. However, we do have that capability to switch remotely now, and it occurs. That's why you get those momentary outages.
Right, and my understanding was, based on our last discussions with perhaps your predecessor, was that you guys were making active efforts to have the redundancy so that each of these substations could feed if one goes down, and that we were being told that you were making improvements in that direction, and I'm just following up on that. And again, I'm not looking to put you on the spot here. If you don't know, you don't know, but if you could follow up with that, that's something I'm interested in, because if you got 5 substations, there should be really no reason why, if one of them goes down, the other 4 can't step up to provide the power.
Of course. Well, I will have an answer for you tomorrow. I'll have a conversation with them, and I certainly will have an answer for you, yes.
Thank you.
And I do know some of that work was done because there was some transformer work that was done at the bottom of Hills Drive near
Yes.
Washington Valley Road a couple
Yes.
years ago.
Yes.
Because I think, besides the
When
Somerset-
I first got here.
When you got, right,
Yes.
right. The Somerset Circuit was having a lot of problems at that point. I think that's why you put that capability in it, to address that issue.
Yes, that was transformer work that was done at that point, but I think we're talking about something else. So that I will get back to you on.
Thank you.
But yes, that was equipment replacement, and that was occurring when I first got on.
And speaking of that, so the
Yes.
boxes in the hills, some of which are better repaired than others. I know you've seen some of the pictures.
I have.
Someone in the audience sent me a picture today. I actually took this picture of this beautiful box leading out to 287 North, which is held together with electrical tape. When are we going to see the inspection crews out there looking at all these boxes and replacing those boxes? I know you have an issue with respect to sourcing materials, but still, some of these boxes are in bad shape.
And your animal issues can be not just a line issue, but your animal issue.
Coming right in there.
could be-
Well, unfortunately, all the issues that we've had are overhead. They haven't been there
They haven't been
yet,
in there yet?
but
But they will.
it's a possibility. That's why.
Right.
If you have a list of all of the boxes that you have been getting reports about, because I got a report of one box on Larkspur Court, and I
Yes,
believe
correct,
that
Mill
we've
Street.
addressed that.
Yes.
But if we can get the customers to call us directly and give us the box, I think that instead of sending you photographs, it may be addressed a little more quickly. But if it's taking too long and you want to follow up with your governing body, they will call me,
Oh, we're not shy. No, it's
and
true.
I will expedite. I'm
Do
not
you-
shy either.
Do you have a way I can tell which is a transformer box and which is an old cable box and an old A&T box? Because we've got green boxes all over the place. I live in the hills now. I couldn't tell you what's a what, except for those big ones I know are transformers,
The
but
big ones are
Big ones.
transformers, and also they're numbered. But if you call me, I can tell you which one is which. Because I wouldn't be able to tell you right now off the top of my head either if you showed me a picture. However, I can locate it on the map and I can tell you exactly what it is.
are any of them in our neighborhoods, or are they all only on the streets?
Yes. Yes and yes.
Okay,
They're everywhere.
all right.
So, but is there a crew from JCP, a field maintenance crew, going out routinely and looking at those boxes?
Yes, we have that's what we call the
Underground.
underground inspections. They inspect everything.
Right.
Including the transformer boxes. The transformer boxes are part of that inspection. So they've just been around probably 2 years ago, I think, most of these locations. But if they are deteriorating more quickly, or if the rust wasn't as bad 2 years ago, but it is now, we ask that you call it in because, sometimes things happen in between. And we will get out there and fix it if something happens in between those inspection years.
And I suspect, look, a lot of these are 30, 35 years old, they're original to the hills, obviously.
Correct.
So you're seeing the rust. So if there is a way to do you said they've done inspections, but that was 2 years ago. If they
Yep.
come back out now, because I think they will see a deterioration in those boxes, clearly. We will call in, but at the same time.
Please call in, yes. Because
we can only do so much. We're not the inspection crew for it.
No, I understand. I understand that, and you're not, we are.
Right.
But we're on a circuit because there are a lot of other underground, neighborhoods that we have to look at. So that's why we're on that 4-year inspection, because there are so many for us to inspect and only so many people to inspect. But in the interim, always, if there is ever a problem, please call me.
Okay.
Now, certainly, we have had issues before COVID, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there were some commitment from JCP&L for repairs and remediation work, and it was implemented.
Yes.
But one of the things that we look at, and we certainly hear that we experience, our residents experience, those momentary outages,
Yes.
especially when people are working remote,
Yes.
and a momentary outage kicks them off of a Zoom or Teams meeting.
Frustrating.
Or screws up their computer
Yep.
and takes them forever to get back, or whether it's a 5-minute or something a little bit longer. But certainly, we don't get this many people normally at a meeting. We certainly appreciate the company. But this tells you that there's a problem out there.
Right.
And we're looking for, the long-term fixes. Those are nice, but there's also the short-term fixes that address those momentary outages. And at one point, one of the questions I had was, I think Carol may have told us that oftentimes the momentary outages don't get counted because they're not long enough to make it into.
That is correct. The SAIDI does not count outages under 5 minutes.
Right.
It counts the outages over.
So a lot of the residents in the hills, those incidents aren't necessarily being captured under your SAIDI numbers.
Right.
So they're not going to be on yes, Jerry, they're not going to be on any of those.
No, they wouldn't be on a chart only because if it's a momentary outage, if it lasts 30 seconds or 1 minute, that is correct.
So,
That's correct.
So-
That is correct.
we'll just wrap up with township committee
Yeah.
comments.
I just
Any-
had a few questions.
Okay.
Okay, so I understand, Wanta, for your informative PowerPoint. And, you said Bedminster doing well as a whole, but there's particular areas that are not doing well, and they're consistently losing power. And I know this from Facebook groups, and everybody's posting, and people are not happy about it. So if our residents aren't happy about it, that's why we're trying to resolve this. So, and there's one particular area, which I believe is like the Wood Duck Pond area,
Yes.
one that they mentioned previously.
Yes.
Is there any way to permanently switch to another source of distribution? So you're saying you can flip a switch, right, if there's an outage. Is there any way to work with your engineers and permanently switch that to a substation that doesn't continue to have these problems?
Well, the substation is not having the problem.
Or
The problem
overhead.
occurs. Yeah, the problem occurs on, the overhead lines and the equipment that is being
But
impacted.
It happens with certain substations more than other, or it's the power that it comes from certain sources than others.
Exactly, and it all
So-
depends on where it's going through.
Right.
Dead River Sub, it runs through an area that's pretty heavily vegetated, and that's
Right.
an issue. That's going to be an issue.
No, vegetation, and then 25% in this station, I'm just looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
25% is a substantial amount of outages due to equipment failure.
Yes.
That's a lot. So, we're not gonna brush that off like, oh, that's just a quarter. A quarter of the outages are due to equipment failure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. So, I see here you guys have circuit improvement work and replacing lightning surge arresters and
Yes.
installed faulted circuit indicators. Are you anticipating, in your opinion, your professional opinions, you do, are you anticipating a substantial improvement to the equipment failure portion of the outages?
Well, I'm not that much of a professional to be able to tell whether it's going to be substantial. That is something that.
An engineer?
That an engineer would be able to tell you, and I can certainly ask that question.
I think that's very important,
And
it's
get
kind of
back
like,
to you.
take ownership of that. Okay.
But we take reliability very seriously,
No.
and that's why we are implementing,
Yeah.
these measures to make sure
Right.
that 25% shrink. However, It is an overhead system.
Right,
And
and-
we are never going to get it down to zero,
Zero,
even
no,
though
I
that's,
understand that.
that's ideal.
That I understand, but there are certain things that kind of can be put into place, especially, like I said, 25% is a substantial amount.
And we certainly are doing
Yeah,
that. I mean,
and
this year-
again, it's a different world we live in now. People are working from home, your Wi-Fi goes out, now you're cut off from the world.
Certainly.
You know,
frustrating.
so it's extremely
Terribly,
frustrating. And
terribly
like I said,
frustrating.
Bedminster as a whole, like where I live, I don't really have that much of an issue of power outages. But there's a particular area, and I said I only know this from Facebook and groups like that people are not happy. And it continually happens in this kind of little chunk of more than other places. So
Yes.
we really want to help those
Yes.
residents. You know, if we have unhappy residents, we want to help them as much as
And
possible.
I appreciate you having me here so that I can hear this and I can bring this back to our reliability engineers and see if there's anything that we can do. And, in terms of switching, when we do switch customers from one line to another, what ends up happening is we have to go back, we have to fix what
Whatever
occurred.
problem, yeah.
So we don't have to take out the outage. We fix what occurred and then we switch them back.
Okay,
That's the way the switching works. So it's not that, they're switched over permanently.
right.
But I will pose that question to our engineers, and I will come back with a response. I hope
Great, thank
somebody's
you.
taking notes on all these questions.
We've got it on video.
This thing's recorded.
It's on video.
It's on video.
Watch them.
So
Start
when
writing
you,
them
and then
down.
when you switch from one line to another, the power flickers? And then when you switch them back, the power flickers again?
Yes.
Okay.
It could flicker,
So they
yes.
could be out twice because
Yeah,
of the thing.
for a few minutes, or not. It all depends on
Yeah.
what they find out there and what type of equipment it is that they're repairing.
Right.
So it depends from time to time.
Yeah, no, I know.
Okay, so I think that
Okay.
addresses the township committee comments. We put a microphone at the table over there. So we're going to ask, first we're going to run through everyone who's here in person. If you could queue up by that microphone. Rich, you're the closest. And if you could give your name and address and address your question to Yolanta.
My name's Rich Costa. I live at 53 High Pond in Wood Duck Pond, and I'm the president of our HOA.
Yes.
I'd like to thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
As I know you have some tough shoes to fill. Your predecessor
I
did an
do.
amazing job.
You can sit in the chair. You just get closer to the mic.
The first thing I want to say is Committeeman Colin Hickey had shown you a picture of what was a switch, not actually a transformer, but a switch that's located on Schley Mountain Road.
Yes.
And it's wrapped up in tape. That switch, when we had the January 17th switch that caught fire just up the road from the switch that you showed us, the super who was on the job, I had actually asked about what the situation was with the switch in the picture with the tape around it. And the supervisor on the job informed me that that switch has been due to be replaced for 2 years, but it's on back order.
Yeah,
The equipment is on back order
Yes.
for 2 years.
yes.
And when I look at your priorities and how you address power outages, how you start first at the plant, then you go toward and take care of hospitals,
Right.
Police department, fire departments, and then you go to large communities.
Yes.
Well, the Hills is a relatively densely populated community.
It is?
And the fact that this particular switch has been on back order for 2 years, they said that the last time that switch came down, that there were a lot of complaints that 1,400 people were knocked offline until they could get that switch repaired.
Right.
So if we know there's a problem, it's been 2 years, isn't there something that can be done to expedite repairing or replacing that switch?
Well, it is working at the moment, so it has been repaired. However, in terms of replacement, the supervisor is telling you the truth. There are there's much material. We're not the only company that's experiencing the supply chain crisis, and we are not getting necessarily all of the equipment that we need timely. We would love to get this equipment much more quickly. But unfortunately, some of it we can get, some of it we can't. We make do with what we have, and we have very talented technicians out there in the field who are making these repairs, even though they don't necessarily have all of the equipment that they need to work with, and we don't have an issue right now. But I do understand your point, and it's well taken, and I agree with you, and I will bring it back to engineering to see if there's anything that we can do to expedite it. I haven't heard anything, from them, but I will ask that question, certainly.
Thank you.
Sure.
And another topic that I know you are very familiar with.
I know what you're going to say.
Yes.
And I think I have some good news for you, but okay, go on.
Okay. Laterals,
Yes,
the underground laterals.
yes. Yes, and before you go on,
So I just want to put some context here. So just so folks in the audience know, Wood Dog Pond had a situation where a lateral with was that a transformer that failed?
No, the line itself.
The line itself
Between-
failed between
the
the transformer
And the meter.
and the association.
Yeah.
And this happened, this was what, about a year ago?
No, August
It was
3rd,
only
August 4th.
August 4th.
August.
And then
So that
again-
was August
And then
4th.
again.
So what happened, a line failed, one building, two buildings in Wood Duck? Two buildings went down in Wood Duck, no power. The association hired an electrician to come in, effect the repairs themselves. So the association paid for the repair of the lateral line leading from the transformer to the buildings. And this issue was then taken up, when Hickey got involved, Rich, as president of the association, all reached out to Yolanta,
yes,
as well as BPU, to see who's responsible for the repair and replacement of that line that failed. So that's the sort of the background for Rich's question.
yes.
Yeah.
And now, short answer, we do. And we do. And this is not an excuse, but I do owe you an explanation, and I owe you a solution, and I owe you an apology. This is what happened. Our technicians were advised, because we do have some developments elsewhere in our service territory where the developer made a deal. They made an agreement with the power company where the developer was going to own certain types of laterals belonging to certain types of residential buildings. So these are generally the buildings that house more than one residential unit, which is independently owned, but the meters are all placed on the outside in a gang. We call them gang meters. So because we do have that situation in our service territory, our technicians were advised that we do not service those types of laterals, that those laterals belong to the property owner, in other words, the HOA, because there are several property owners in those buildings. What I ended up doing is I employed the assistance of a number of departments in the company, and I made sure that we researched and turned over every single piece of paper. This was with the full backing of my company. They wanted us to get down to the bottom of it, and what I can tell you is we finally found that original map. That thing is almost 30 years old, and as you might imagine, in a company like ours, there is employee turnover. You don't always remember what happened 30 years ago, but we finally found the paperwork, we found the map, and we were able to determine that, yes, we own the laterals. So that's the answer. And I'm sorry that it took this long, and I'm sorry that you were the catalyst for this, and I'm sorry that you had to experience this, but now that we have, we know we own the laterals. So this is never going to happen again in the hills. Now, here's my solution. I am going to put you together with my best customer support associate so that you can get reimbursed. So I want you to send me the bill, and I'm going to get you reimbursed.
I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
And Commitment Colin Hickey, you too. Thank you.
No, thank you, and that's great news, Yolanda,
And thank you
because
for bringing this to my attention. No, and I wasn't going to let this rest without
Thank you.
knowing.
if it happened once or twice, it's going to happen again and again, so.
Absolutely. And, you know, to be fair, we never had to deal with the lateral issues in the hills because, you know, the hills are approximately 30 years old. I remember looking for houses probably in the mid-90s and, you know, certain portions of the hills were still being built. So it's not that old. But, you know, everything ages, we age, you know, I'm starting to fall apart. So it's, you know, everything starts to fall apart eventually. And so this is our first foray into the issue with the laterals. And I just wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing and that's what we're going to be doing from now on. We own them. We own them. We own the laterals in the hills.
I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, Rich, for being so reactive. Well, not reactive, that's the wrong word, but being so proactive. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I forget my day job once in a while. For being so proactive, because you moved right away on behalf of your residents in Wood Duck. So, you know, on behalf of, from here, we appreciate, because condominium associations, you bring local government extremely hyper local, and to have good leadership like yours and being responsive, and then working with Colin and Yolanta to get to the bottom of this and get the reimbursement. You've done a great service for your community. So thank you, Rich.
I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank Bedminster Township Committee enough for all your help and support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Vincent Garcia, 377 Finch Lane, in Long Meadow. I'm also a Long Meadow board member. I'm actually bringing up two things. One, Colin brought a nice picture of the exact switch I was talking about.
Yes.
I drive by it every day, and I noticed it's getting worse very fast. There are two gaping holes on the southwest corner of the actual switch that now pests can get in, squirrels, mice, whatever. I just want to mention that. So I guess the question I have is, you mentioned a 2-year back order. What type of materials are, I mean, I know it's a steel, it's rusting. I know that you also have fiberglass type of covers.
Right.
Is there a difference in longevity, how long we expect something to stay there and not deteriorate the way it's going now?
I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't work at the line, but I hang around the line long enough to, you know, hear what they have to say. And there are certain types of material that belong on certain type of equipment. So I couldn't tell you if those things are interchangeable or not, but that is certainly something that I can bring up to my line and see what they say. If there's something else that we can do in its place. And I know that they're not going to be able to do that unilaterally either. They're going to have to go through engineering to ensure that we're doing it the right way, because we don't want to cause a problem. So that is certainly something that I will look into. So I would ask that Committeeman he give me that photograph and the location, and I will be happy to look into that tomorrow with engineering and with line.
Thank you. I mean,
You're welcome.
you know, if they could even just patch the holes, cover the holes, that might help. In case
Right.
that one animal just
Exactly.
decide to go in there.
Exactly. No, I completely understood. And, you know, next time you see something like that, if you could please bring it to our attention, if you call that 1-800 number and bring it to our attention, once it's in the system, it's easy for me to track. You know, once they have an order open, when you call the 1-800 number and you report any type of trouble, they create an order number. So it's easy for me then to go into find out exactly where it is, you know, because right now, you know, I'm just hearing about this evening, and I'm going to go and create an order tomorrow. I'm going to make sure to do that. But if I already had one, maybe I would have more information for you.
Oh, great. And you'll give that information, I guess, to the Township Committee here? So
Certainly.
we can get that information as to where you're going to put it on the schedule, so we get an idea?
Yes, yes,
Great.
yes.
The presentation, can we get a copy of that?
I don't see why not. It's public. It's on the public record at this
Well,
point.
so, okay.
Yeah,
But if you could-
one thing what we'll do is we'll just, we'll check with JCP&L just to make sure, Yolanta,
Yes.
you can make sure that there's nothing in here that's, should not be provided.
Post it.
Into a public meeting, but no, I will double check. There's nothing
Why don't we just post it?
in the published version.
Yeah,
Why don't we just post it? Once
Yeah,
we
but
clear that, that's all good.
Once it's clear, we'll post it. We have copies. We do have an electronic version of it, and we can post it on our website. But I just want to make sure that identifying where the lines are, how they connect is
Yes.
all okay.
Attorneys.
Yes.
Well, I mean, what's really my interest in the presentation is to break down the substations, because when we looked at it on the screen, it was a little confusing. And I noticed
I
that
know.
when you went through the pages, you showed one substation here, one substation, and it was actually a little clearer that way. Then when they were all combined, it was hard to look at.
Absolutely
So-
true. That's why I did it that way, where, they're almost coming in on each slide, so you can see where they are, because yes, when they all come in at once, it's very confusing.
Yeah, so actually, that part of the presentation is really the important part I'm really interested in, is the substation breakdown. So,
Okay,
but thank you very much. Thanks for the committee, and thanks for your presentation.
thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you.
Jerry, we'll need your name and address, please.
Jerry Cohen, 5 Quailbrook Court. Jerry Cohen, 5 Quailbrook Court, Bedminster.
And which
Unfortunately, I am in Wood Duck Pond.
Wood Duck, okay.
Very unfortunately. So 2 things. You said that this is your first opportunity to dig into the substations, but we've basically seen this exact presentation probably 3 or 4 times.
Understood.
Nothing really new for
Well,
us.
the substations haven't changed.
And it's really
true.
not working, not in the Wood Duck Pond area. You mentioned that if it's 5 minutes or less, it doesn't show up.
It does not show up.
Jackie Weber, who's in the back there, had put together a group of all of us so that we can stay in touch. And I don't want to pull you into this, but she does keep track of the time. And there are dozens and dozens of times that are not showing up on your charts. So that's
Correct.
definitely a really big issue.
Correct.
And, the disruption. So as far as the being from Wood Duck Pond, the other problem is, which the mayor mentioned, people in Long Meadow, 1 block over, have power, and Superstorm Sandy, I believe it was a 3-day difference between the power for Wood Duck Pond versus Long Meadow, so you can look across behind your car in the parking lot and see other people that have power.
Yes.
So whatever you're attempting to do, I guess we can appreciate the efforts, but nothing's really working consistently, and being from Wood Duck Pond is definitely a problem. My husband, who I married 8 years ago, lived in Long Meadow, and unfortunately, we chose my house instead of his house.
Instead of his house.
And we have power outages all the time when he never had them before. So I do feel like there is a very major effort with our particular neighborhood, which I know Gina had mentioned, and it's really at a crisis level that needs to be addressed with a permanent resolution.
Would you be able to get me that list that you've been compiling of the momentary outages? I'd like to see that, if
have
possible. Could you email it?
Yeah, I mean, I
Possibly to
think
the
it's
governing
much
body?
more involved. And then the other thing that I'll mention, where you said we can call. So I was one of the people driving past I guess it's the switch
The
box
switch box.
on fire,
Mhm.
and I called JCP&L 3
Yes.
times, and I was disconnected 3 times in a 10-minute period. I couldn't get through to anybody.
It
So
may have
I
been because there
called-
were so many people calling at that very moment, but I
Doesn't
understand
matter.
the frustration, and no, that's something we're looking into. That's something absolutely that needs to be rectified. I agree with
Like,
you.
there was no way for me to get through. I mean, eventually you call the fire department.
Right,
I
right.
called Jeff Leonard. There are people that we know. Colin has been phenomenal, really. I can't say enough about Colin and the mayor as far as your involvement with all of this. So we just need better. That's really the bottom line, and I think it's very well overdue.
Well, I appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
So thank you for whatever you can do.
Thank you, Jerry. And thank you for those nice comments about Committeeman Hickey.
I didn't pay her.
He's phenomenal, too.
Hey, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Hello.
Mark Cabay, Edgemont Lane. So first is thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you for your presentation. I look forward to seeing the whole thing in some more detail, because I still don't know which substation we're being supplied from. That being said, I'm president of the Knollcrest Board of Trustees, and on January 6th of this year, at about 3:25 PM. All of our units lost power in the hills. It was only Knollcrest, nobody else. And we lost power for approximately 3 hours and 45 minutes. Could you give us an official explanation? It doesn't have to be tonight.
That
As
was-
to what happened and why.
The beginning of this year?
Yep, January 6th.
January 6th. If you give me a minute, I think I could look it up on my GIS.
Yeah, I know you didn't come to present that. I just want to say you can respond to the Township Committee, and I'll reach out to them and I'll get that
Absolutely.
information. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. If,
So-
if there's ever a question about why an outage occurred, I get this question from a lot of elected officials throughout my service territory. I always give them an answer, the best answer that I can. So anytime.
So I can tell you that we have at least 4 other of my neighbors on the phone that may or may ask you the same type of thing. So maybe
Okay.
we'll save you some questions there. So then 2 other points. With your program to improve the equipment, right?
Yes.
In terms of the metrics and the reasons for doing it. So is it possible then in your research and going back to the rest of the team, if you could give us a expected % improvement with regards to that program as to, the money and the time and labor being spent to improve that equipment?
I will go back to my engineering team
Because-
and I will get you whatever information that they are permitted to share.
Okay.
In that regard.
Okay. And then my third comment here, and then I'm done. Actually, no, sorry. I'll take that back. 2 more comments. All right. If you see any rust on one of those boxes, right, you are behind in your maintenance. Because by the time you see rust, there's a lot more that's going on underneath.
That is potentially true. That
It's
is
a
potentially true.
it's a fact-based thing. I've got a background in materials and whatnot. So by the time you see the rust, you're behind. The other comment I would like to say is then we don't have I work from home. We don't have the outages that are experienced by some of the other communities. So it's possible. I just don't know what the differences between what Duck Pond and our community is. But I don't have the number of experience, what I'm hearing, I don't have that anywhere near that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And you might be fed you may be on a different circuit.
I don't
and that's
actually
why.
know, hopefully the PowerPoint presentation will tell us, I don't know what substation is providing.
And Mark, I believe your outage, and Yolanta, this was an underground local line fault, the outage that Mark is mentioning in early January.
Yeah.
So I got a picture of it from
think
one
so.
of your residents, as a matter of
I
fact.
think you're right, but I just wanted to get the
Yeah.
official response, so.
Yeah, I'll look into
Yeah, if
that.
you can look into that, thank you.
As you can imagine, it comes up frequently at our meetings.
Yeah,
I
of
just want to
course.
have an answer for everybody.
Of course.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right, well, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeff Leonard, I am a Wynwood resident, board member, and Hills Village North president. I'm on Westcott Road. I'm one of the people that was involved with the incident that Jerry was reporting, and I'm probably Colin hears from me every time the lights go out. First of all, I think you guys ought to put him on your payroll. First of all, I'm going to say that. So, because he's done an awful lot of advocacy, to get us our power back, and I appreciate that to you and Mayor Jacobs and everybody. And I also appreciate my colleague, Rich Costa, who had helped us all figure out what was going on with the laterals. And I appreciate that you providing that information. I'm going to pass that along to all our presidents and my own boards.
Very good.
So that's very good news. We appreciate that. So one of the things that I was going to suggest, well, 2 things, to reiterate what Jerry was saying about calling in to the power company, even when there isn't a widespread event going on. One of the things I find is you can't even get a person on the phone. You might get a machine, or you have to use the app, which doesn't always work, or something like that. So I just want you to know that that's an arduous process. So I wind up going through our local government, which I know the message will get through that way. And we've asked people to report it on, a lot of people go on Facebook and report it, and then Colin sees it, and then he tells you, and then that kind of stuff. So that's been happening. So it might make it easier for people to communicate with you by doing making improvements to the call-in system. But even more importantly, what I would like to see happen is, because we've talked about this when this has come up at prior meetings, if there's any way you all can invest in smart meters.
We're rolling them out this year.
That would be great,
We
because
are, smart meters are
Yep.
coming. We will know instantaneously when you
that's
have an
the
outage.
point. Then none of this will be necessary. You'll
None
know
of
right
this will-
away.
no, you're
and
absolutely
people
right.
Go out to the site, and then maybe also, if the power goes out, you go online and it says, your power will be back at 1 PM, but the crew isn't there yet. How would you know that? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So,
Yeah,
so I mean,
absolutely.
so
Maybe
it
this-
might
that could
make
be
that
part of
process a
another
little more
presentation.
accurate
Could you just
too.
back up and if you
Yeah.
could describe smart meter technology for everyone?
Yep.
Well, the smart meter technology, basically the meter that you have in your house right now, that will be replaced, and we will be able to read your meter readings not even remotely. We will be doing it from a location. There will not be any more meter readers. No one will have to be coming around even to remotely, zap your meter reading from your property. This will be happening from a completely separate location. And also with outages, we are going to be able to detect outages a few moments before you even know that you're going to be having an outage. So, the smart meter rollout, I think that should be part of another presentation, because we are going to be rolling them out. They're coming. So this is certainly something that, that I'm sure the public wants to hear about. I don't have my PowerPoint on smart meters with me yet today, but I will, and I certainly can come back if you'd like to have me.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great, because the meter will know when there's no power coming to it. It'll work similarly to how cell phone signals tell you where traffic is on the highway.
Exactly.
So it's a great thing.
It's a wonderful
fantastic
thing.
when that
So
happens.
it's a really great rollout. We finally got approval from the BPU to do it, so it's coming. Smart meters are coming.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Anyone else in person have questions or comments? Are you sure? Yeah, sure. Okay, come on up. I knew I could get something.
Yeah, right.
How you doing? My name is Jamie Wicks. I'm a Jersey Central lineman out of Washington.
There you go. Hello there.
All right.
So my question is the system in the
Yeah.
hills.
Yep.
It was started to be put in 1986. Okay, what is the life expectancy of the wire that's in the ground?
I cannot answer
About
that
25 years,
question.
30 years maximum.
Yeah, I would
You're
imagine.
over that already.
And
So when
that's
you're
what's
saying
happening.
25% of equipment failure. Okay, 25% of equipment failure.
Well, we're talking about
faults,
the
long-
overhead lines. We're not talking about the underground
I'm just saying,
lines.
a lot of that's
Yeah.
also, I've been a lineman now for 30 years. Okay.
Well, then it's great
So-
that you're here, because you
Right.
can educate me as well. So I really
yes.
appreciate
Oh,
it.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, but I'm just saying, the lines in the ground, they also fail. That's also your equipment failure. It's not just what's going on overhead with the trees. Okay, it's also the maintenance of, you're saying you inspect your underground all the time. You inspect the boxes.
Well, every 4 years. It's on a
The
4-year
boxes.
rotation.
We don't inspect the underground wires.
Well, I don't know that there's a way to inspect the underground
Well, I'm
wires
just saying, when something's
necessarily.
life expectancy is 30 years, and you're over that already by how many? You're gonna have faults and failure on
Yeah,
your
certainly. I
equipment.
mean, there are portions of the hills, yeah, certainly, that are a little over 30 years, some
mean,
that are
your-
30, some are
Your
that are
switch
just under
gears
30.
are falling apart,
So,
they're
yeah.
all rusted, your transformers are getting holes in it. That's exactly what's going on with your wires too, okay? It's not just your trees, it's not just the poles, the equipment coming from the substations, okay? There's a lot of faults and stuff that happen inside of these developments, all over the place, all over the company.
So
I'm sure that
are
they
you
do.
seeing this outside of this area as well? You're saying that?
Oh, yes, I'm
these
not
25, 30
I'm not
year old-
actually in charge of this area. I'm out of the Washington line shop.
Okay.
Okay?
Where we have a lot
Our
of
brother and
tree
sister district is Flemington Line, which is in charge of the hills. Okay? Years ago, when I was apprentice, this would have been the Burnersville territory, which that shop closed down. Okay? And which that you would have shopped much closer. First Energy would have kept it open. okay? And I actually had the pleasure of putting in some of the wire here when I was an apprentice 30 years ago.
So when the wire was
And I
put
know who
in-
you worked with.
What?
I think I know who you worked with. He's one of the line shop guys in Summit. He also said he was laying wire here when he was an
Yeah,
apprentice 30 years ago.
Skip Clifford and all
Yeah,
those guys,
yep.
Richie Demeter, Jimmy
Yep.
Morrow,
Yep.
So-
Nick
Yep.
Grunsky.
So, Mr. Works, when the wire was installed, no conduit? It was just wire?
I think the conduit was basically on some of the secondaries because some of the people that moved into their homes, even before they could close on a house, a leg was already done. They were only getting 120, they weren't getting 240. So they told the contractors before they would proceed that they had to have it in conduit. So I know a lot of the secondaries were put in conduit after a certain point in time, but you still basically, the stuff from the beginning was direct burial.
So as long as it's, with a direct bury, you're still gonna, conduits might save you, buy you another couple of years, but 25 years would be the max, so the
Well, the thing is,
situation-
with things that's in conduit, if something goes bad, you pull it out and you pull it back in.
Right.
If you don't have conduit,
You gotta
then you
dig
get
it
into
all up.
a flow mold or something like that, which is very expensive. Okay, you have a company come on out and they go from transformer to transformer, and they bore underneath the ground so you don't have to dig it up, and you have a single conduit for a single piece of wire.
So the situation that was experienced in Wood Duck Pond with.
I do not know exactly what that is. They just said it was a 25% in Wood Duck Pond. I think you said that, right? Was 25% equipment failure, right? And then that, you did say that, correct?
I said one of the substations has 26%, which is a
26%.
quarter. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm just saying a lot of that is also equipment failure. I'm going to say two underground problems also.
I'm
Your
not sure
boxes are
that that's what the
rusted.
engineer looked at, but I'll ask if that was part of the reliability study.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. And your lightning arrestor program. Okay.
Yep,
We already installed that on every new piece of equipment that we hang up.
correct.
Okay, so I know nothing about going out and changing out old arresters.
Well, that was part of the 2023 repair implementation. That's according to the engineers.
Okay,
According to the reliability engineers. I didn't put this PowerPoint together. It was put together by the engineers in our company.
okay, because every piece of equipment that we hang, transformer, reclosure, whatever, that is already has arresters and everything that we install on those transformers and reclosures.
Right, those are for all the new ones. Yeah, so they're going back in there replacing the old ones. That's what my understanding is from what the engineers have told me.
Okay, I would like to see that. I hope it's true. But I mean, that's just for lightning protection, understand? That's
Yes.
not for trees.
No, not
That's
for
not
trees.
for anything like that.
Yep.
You know, squirrels or anything like that. That's just
Nope.
for lightning protection, and that's it.
No, but
You
let me
know?
ask you, squirrels are number one, aren't they? Aren't they the worst when it comes to animal
Trees,
contact?
squirrels,
Squirrels.
lack of maintenance. There's a lot of things. Thank you very much. Do you guys have any more questions for me?
Yes, Mr.
Can I
Wicks.
take a look at your box 1 minute there?
Yeah, sure can. Question for you, though, in terms of, in your line shop, is anything being done proactively with those underground lines? In terms of, because actually, one of the faults that happened before you took the job on, and Carol was here, Wood Duck Pond was experiencing a lot of issues, and it was identified it was an underground line that had just basically rusted out and failed.
Okay.
So that was replaced, and it improved service for a while. Are you seeing anything proactively being done in your line shop to address that issue, or is it just when it fails, you replace it?
Basically, when something fails more than once or twice, if it's underground, we usually try to get a flow mode so it does not happen again, whether it be a secondary or a primary. You do see, especially if it's old wire, if it has failed before and you know the wire in that whole section is going bad or whatever, every time you have a fault, it's not like you're going to dig it up and fix it. You'll fix it and then you'll have on flow mode behind you. And that way
Can you explain
have
that, just, you
Yeah,
said flow mode?
explain the flow mode because it's
Okay,
an
a
old
flow
word.
mode is a machine that burrows underneath the ground.
Got it.
And they go from A to B, transformer to transformer.
Got it.
And then they pull in a pipe, and then they pull into wire, and we dig it to the transformers, and then we connect the power in that way. From a transformer that has power to a transformer that don't have power, or to a riser to a transformer in a development.
Got it.
Okay, so if you know the wire is that old, instead of going back and repairing it, and repairing it and repairing it. When you repair it the first time, you know the wire is 30, 35 years old. You flow mold it, okay, after you make the repair, and then you put in that new piece, because it's just gonna happen again.
Right, again.
The wire's old, degradation, everything over time. Okay?
Yep.
Any more questions?
No, but what a great resource.
Yeah, thank you.
One more question for you. So with fiber optics, they're doing.
I'm a lineman.
They're doing a process called stitch boring, where they drill holes every 50 feet and then run an underground torpedo underground to connect the two holes. So it's minimally invasive trenching.
I'm not here.
What you're talking about is like that surge torpedo that goes out of the ground. This can go 300-400 feet from A to B. Okay, and this is done with a machine that it's like a crawler machine on the ground, and they can actually follow it as they go along, and they get a mark out, and they know where the old wires are at, so that they don't hit your cable, your electrical, or your secondaries, and they know everything might be at 46 inches, so either they'll go below it or above it, and go from A to B. But what you're talking about with the bullet, that's very slow.
Can they do that even when the winter months when the ground is frozen?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, once again, any more questions for Yolanta here in person? Come on up to the microphone, please. And name and address.
Well, my name is Jeff Eckloff. I'm president of Local 1289, and my members work for Jersey Central Power and Light and for Bedminster and all around the state.
Yes.
The problem is we don't have the staffing levels anymore. First Energy has attrited us to the point where we cannot keep up with a lot of the maintenance. That's a lot of the problems that you're having, okay? This is gonna continue. And she's going to bring it back, because all this is smoke and mirrors as far as no disrespect to you. This is all smoke and mirrors. I'll take it back to engineers. And you know what? They'll sit on it like it's an egg. Okay? Nothing's going to happen. All the townships have to get together and they have to work together to start getting money put back into the system. You need a small substation. Your problems are not going to go away. I'm just telling you right now, they're not going away. And you're going to be coming up here again, and you're going to be talking to the mayor, and you're going to be talking to this person, and it's going to go on and on and on, okay? It's just, they tell you what you want to hear, and they basically give you a little piece of the cake, and they take the whole other piece of cake, okay? They just give you a little tip. Nothing's going to get fixed until you raise hell with Jersey Central Power and Light and get on them to put money back into the system. They attrited the line force that we had. We had districts that had 25, 30, 35 in a district. You know the areas that they cover. They're wide and broad. You have 10 to 12 linemen in each of those districts, some less, some a little more. Some it's a bigger district, they might have 15 or so. You have Washington, 10, Flemington, maybe 12. They're servicing that whole district. We cannot even support a storm like we just had that First Energy mismanaged to the point that most other utilities were done by late Christmas Eve. But our storm lasted to the 27th. We were in contact, number one, that storm, we all knew that it was coming, right? For 2 weeks. When the week came, right before the storm, that Monday, my Vice President, Bobby Bruno, calls me up and said, "Did you hear anything from the company?" I said, "No. I'm waiting to hear. We'll come up with a plan, and we'll make sure that we have the sufficient staff that we can maybe put 12-hour shift on, that people can go see their family for Christmas, pop back in." Nothing Monday, nothing Tuesday, nothing Wednesday, Thursday. He says, Jeff, I'm coming in. We'll talk in the morning. We'll call up Jim Fakel and we'll straighten out what's going on and see what their plan is. Called up Jim, didn't know. He said that, you know what, we're not really seeing nothing, maybe 10-mile-an-hour winds. I'm seeing 40, 45-mile-an-hour winds. She's talking about trees that can just fall down just without winds. And you're talking 40, 45-mile-an-hour winds, flash, ice, because it's so cold out, 10 degrees. With the wind chill, is probably colder than that. Told me to call, that he'd have the incident commander, who was Dennis Pavagati, who was director at that time, at this time, and said that he'll talk to us. Said that we really aren't seeing anything. The meteorologist is saying 10 miles an hour. He says, we're not seeing that. We're going to have a problem. Nope, we're not forcing anybody, no mandatory overtime, nothing. So right now, your butts are all hanging out there.
You went out.
The community is, you're not servicing the community.
No.
So, Friday.
Okay, with all due respect.
Friday, no, listen.
We can't litigate the union issues right now.
I'm trying to help Bedminster and everybody else.
Well, Bedminster was not out during Christmas. What you're talking about happened down mostly in Central, I understand.
No, North also. North got hit worse than what the South did.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is
but we're talking about Bedminster's reliability today.
and Bedminster's too. This is the issue. And then what happened on Friday, we're not, like I said, no mandatory overtime. We're not holding anybody. And we say, you got to be kidding me. That night, at 6:30 at night, and we knew mandatory over, they sent everybody home at 3:30 and said, Merry Christmas. Now you don't even have that pool of people to cover your territories. Okay, and this is throughout the whole company. Channel News 12 was down at Union Beach saying that, you know what, they're all manned up, we're ready to go, the force, we got all the linemen ready, the equipment, they had 12,000 people out already. At 3:30, they sent everybody home. 6:30 at night, they had a direct order. Now this is Christmas vacation, right? Now, nobody's coming back in. Now they're direct ordering everybody on that property. Now they have to stay. They don't have the manpower. They sent the outside contractors home. Now we don't have the availability of outside contractors because they always go where the money goes. Okay? So I just want to let you know that Jersey Central is not servicing you the correct way. They're not putting money back into the infrastructure. They're not fixing your substations. You need linemen, you need UNM, you need.
One of the reasons that we hold these meetings is to actually bring out to the public a lot of the issues that we see, and we do our best to hold JCP&L and First Energy accountable.
Yes.
So when we hear from our residents who, right, that's where we're focused on. And we do, and trust me, I do coordinate, as well as Colin Hickey does, with our fellow municipalities, and when it's appropriate, down to BPU as well. So we certainly understand the resources as they get deployed by First Energy and JCP&L, and it's something that we hold Yolanta, who's our liaison, accountable. But we know that there's others, that there's levels up above Yolanta getting to, eventually maybe all the way to Ohio, which is where First Energy is based at.
Yes.
So we understand, and the more that we discuss and bring these matters to light, we're hopeful that we see, we have to be hopeful that we can hold JCP&L accountable. And just as we've talked about, there's deferred maintenance issues, there's repair issues, but eventually looking at the life cycle of, I'll just stick with underground wires. So direct bury in the hills, right? In units associations that are now 25, 30, 35 years old. This is something that JCPL is going to have to deal with. And frankly,
And that's what I'm trying to tell you, they don't have the manpower.
I understand. And the way we want to see it is we want to see, not to use reactive, proactive. We're going to see proactive, and we're going to hold JCP&L accountable. And so this is not going to be the last time that we see Yolanta here.
Of course.
And I certainly appreciate it, because I think the more money that's devoted by First Energy, the sooner we can address, and I'm saying we, because it's all of us together, to address the issues that our associations are experiencing.
And like I said, all of us, and I have another line, Jim Morrow, we all worked and serviced this area in our career. I'm going on 37 years, Jimmy has over 40, Jamie has 30 plus. So we've all worked here, and gotta keep your lights on and do the best we can. But we're running short, and we need for people to step up and hold Jersey Central accountable and to keep your lights on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jamie, before you.
So there's a staffing issue.
No, you got to come on up, and you have to give your name and address.
Hello, Pete Coppish in Wren Lane in Long Meadow. So if I can sum up the gentleman who just spoke, staffing issue is a major contributor to the problem. That needs to be added into this mix, if I heard him right.
I am here to gather information, to hear what the residents of Bedminster have to say. I'm here to bring you what our reliability studies have shown, and I'm also here to tell you that there is a whole operations section that determines how many people are going to be hired, how many people are going to be held back if there happens to be a storm. There are people that make those judgments. No one's perfect. However, we are striving to do the best that we can to serve our customers. That's why I'm here. I'm the liaison, the conduit between the company and between your your governing body. And I am going to ensure that everything that I'm hearing this evening, because I take my job very seriously. I've only been with the company for 1.5 years, but I intend to be with this company for many, many years coming. So what I want to hear is your concerns. I want to be able to pinpoint what we are complaining about, because what I'm hearing is there are some areas that seem to be better served or are functioning better than others. That's why I'm here. I'm here to give you information, but I'm also here to gather facts and to take those facts back.
Are you having a difficult time hiring linemen?
I am not involved in hiring linemen. As I say, we have a whole operations department that's in charge of that. There are minds greater than mine who are working on those issues.
If you could get back to on that, that'd be great, because that could be a major problem.
Right,
Okay,
and I would
appreciate
say
it.
that JCPL,
Thank you. Thank you.
JCPL has come to us in the past, and I think it was Dave Anderson that used to do this?
John Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
John Anderson. John Anderson would come and talk about the lineman training that was going on, that was being offered, terrific opportunities for those positions. And once
It
again,
really is. It's those are
and I
wonderful
think we
positions.
actually have had residents, some younger folks apply and go through that program. A former police chief may have someone who's steering in that direction as well. So a great opportunity, and so it's training and involvement with JCPL and the unions. So we hope to see that there's more folks, and that if there's a lineman staffing issue, that it is addressed. Once again, that comes back to the live issue. Okay, so if we're done in person, Ms. Ray, let's, who's got their,
So why don't we just start in order here? We have 4 people with their hands raised.
okay, same as before,
So I'll go ahead and ask them to unmute.
we'll ask one at a time.
And it's gonna be Lisa Robinson will be up first, please.
Okay, Lisa, address, please.
Hello, 71 Larkspur Court. Basically, I just wanted to, first of all, I wanted to thank Yolanda for being here and for her time this evening. I also want to say kudos to Jeff for his candor.
Which Jeff are you referring to? We had a couple Jeffs.
The gentleman that just spoke.
A very handsome fellow.
The gentleman that just spoke from JCP&L. So thank you for your candor about your staffing issues and some of the problems that JCP&L face. And basically, I hear what Yolanda, what you said earlier about if there's a problem, if you see something, call it in. But quite frankly, it's a little frustrating because I, for example, have been working with Colin Hickey on trying to get some repairs done, replacements done to some of the boxes in Village Green. Village Green is one of the older communities, excuse me, built 84, 85. So our infrastructure over here is very old. Colin has been wonderful in trying to help in that regard, but it's been a bit frustrating because when we actually had our property manager walk the property, went around, took a picture of every single box, and made a map, and we highlighted every location within this community where there is a box. We submitted the pictures and the map. So this way they would have a very easy time coming around and looking at the condition of the equipment. You mentioned the one on Larkspur Court that got fixed, I think like a year or so ago, and I really appreciate that. Colin worked hard to help that happen. It was dangerous. The cover had big holes in it. It was dangerous. But we have one that he's been trying to help me get fixed for about probably over 2 years now. And we have submitted this map and pictures probably about 3 times, maybe more. And we're told that someone's going to come out and look at it. I know that you said there's a schedule of maintenance that occurs. And with all due respect, I have a very hard time believing that this maintenance this preventative maintenance is happening as scheduled as we're being told, because I have a hard time believing that if a crew came out and looked at the condition of some of these boxes, that they would think they were okay to leave them like that. They have big holes in them. We have a lot of children in that area. It's Mountain Court that play over there. They can put their hands in there. Anything could happen. It's a hazard. When it rains, the wet gets in, moisture gets in there. That happens to be a section that seems to have had the most problems lately when we've had power outages. Now, it might not be pertaining to, related to that box. I don't know, but there's people in that area that have medical equipment that when their power goes out in their building, it's a big problem. I know that for the past 2 years, we've been told that it's been hard to get, it's a supply chain issue. But again, with all due respect, the condition of these boxes has been in bad shape long before COVID even came along. So I'm just, questioning this maintenance schedule that they say is happening. I never see a JCP&L truck driving around here looking at the equipment. I just have never seen it. I see them here when they're responding to something that's happened. But again, we go back to the being proactive and not reactive. And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's frustrating. And we also go very long periods of time on this issue. And God bless Colin for being patient with me, because I'll say, where are we with this where are we with this box issue? Where are we with this box issue? That we don't hear back from anybody. So it becomes very frustrating. You feel like you're wasting your time, and I try to keep on this because I'm the vice president here. And I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to help keep everyone safe. I took this on as one of my personal things to follow up on, and I made that commitment to my community, and I'm asked about it all the time. And how many times can I keep saying, we've told them about it, they're working on it, we're supposedly on a list, or there's no equipment. So, and if that is true, that let's just say there isn't the equipment, there's no inventory right now to replace it, what can we do in the meantime to get a better fix on this piece of dangerous equipment that it has duct tape on it? That's what they did. They came out and they put duct tape on it. I have to believe there's got to be something more that we can do. So these are just the frustrating issues that we have, the lack of response. Again, this box has been installed since 1984, 85. I have a hard time believing that they think that it was okay to leave it like this all these years. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, I know it's not your fault, any of this, but you're going to take this back, and please bring back the frustration that we're experiencing. We have children. These things they're not safe. They're not safe.
Absolutely. And I have brought these issues back. I have spoken, and you are being looked at. You are in line, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm coming out there. If you want to meet me, I'm happy to meet you out there one day. I would like to walk that site. I would like to take photographs. I think it'll be better, I think, if I go out there myself, take a look at it, and if I walk the site with you, if you don't mind.
And you'll want, we can put you in touch with Lisa.
Yep.
And we can coordinate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
And thank you, Colin. I appreciate your help on this too.
Anytime, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for your persistence and your patience.
And I speak to Colin often.
Yes, we are. Your number might be memorized now. I think it is.
Okay, Robin.
Mayor, next up, we have Peter Barron. I'm going to ask to unmute.
Okay, Mr. Barron, address, please.
Address is 21 Mountain Court. And I would like to thank Yolanda for taking your time out to being here and taking our concerns, as well as the committee too. I live, as Lisa mentioned, I live in Mountain Court, and in my general area, there are a lot of boxes that are in disrepair. They're in horrible condition. I think one of the boxes was partially opened right near my building in Mountain Court. And it seemed like it was partially opened, and that at some point a piece of metal was soldered on to it just to as like a temporary fix. But it's in bad condition. And I do also want to point out that there was a power failure that happened on April, I want to say it was around April 10th or 11th. And before this power failure happened, I noticed that there's a piece of plywood with electrical equipment in the King's supermarket, or the shopping center in the Hills Village shopping center. And I noticed that it was on a hill and it was leaning. And I walked nearby it, and within safe distance, of course. And I looked down, there was no concrete foundation to stabilize that structure. And I said to myself, one of these days, something bad will eventually happen. And around April 10th or 11th, somewhere around there, power failure right there. So that was, I noticed that too. And I noticed that there was a new box, and that the problem had been fixed. And I looked further after when it was repaired. Still, there is no concrete foundation. It's in wooden planks buried into the ground with no foundation to hold it from that happening again. And it's going to happen again, where wind, rain, weather conditions are going to erode around it, and it's just going to fail again.
Can you give me that location? Sorry, can you get me that
No,
location?
it's okay. The location is, trying to think, it's right near the Peapack Gladstone Bank.
Okay.
Yeah, within
That's the
like
King
probably
Plaza.
like,
Remember,
I know exactly where.
I put you in contact with the owner?
Yes.
That's what that is.
Yep, that, exactly. That I believe that area belongs to that owner. I had.
That's correct.
Yes, okay, all right.
okay. I didn't know if that was your property or if it was private property or someone else's property, but I noticed that that was an issue and, or soon to be issue. And it did, come to fruition, and it did happen, unfortunately. And which I think therefore caused a cascading effect and affected that box or that transformer down there. And it did fail, and it was repaired and with a new box I saw. So that was good. But it just seems that there's like a reoccurring pattern of asset management that JCP&L is not upholding to. And as Jeff and a few others who have worked with JCP&L, they've pointed that out clearly. They have, they're not putting money into, asset protection or asset management. They're somewhat being, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the company is being negligent. And that's unfortunate. And it's frustrating too, because I have a neighbor, or I used to have a neighbor that was an elderly woman that had issues too. And whenever the power went out, she would always, freak out and everything else like that. And I had to help her because she was living by herself, and she couldn't necessarily deal with it on her own. And it was hard to, I had to calm her down and everything else like that. So there is a great deal in this community. There's a lot of elderly people that live in this community, and some of them can't handle something like this. They can't handle, power outages that happen on a regular basis. So you got to put that into account too. And it's unfortunate. And again, it's unfortunate that JCP&L is being negligent. So.
Thank you, Peter, for your comments, and also thank you for helping your neighbor when she was in need. So thank you for helping out.
No problem. You're welcome. And thanks,
thank
Sam
you.
and Yolanda, and thank you, Jeff, and everyone else working at JCP&L. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Robin?
Okay, next we have Timothy Grubb.
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Timothy Grubb.
Timothy Grubb. Mr. Grubb, your address, please?
Yes, hello, folks. Timothy Grubb, 23 Mountain Court in Bedminster. And I'm here to speak to some of the same issues that you just heard from Lisa Robinson and Peter Brand, since I live on Mountain Court. Been here since 1985, and the box in Mountain Court was installed in 1984. It's never been replaced or correctly serviced since that point. And as has been pointed out here, it developed holes, at least a decade ago, that were eventually taped over. Lisa referred to it as duct tape. I think it might be a little bit thicker than that, but it was duct taped about 5 years ago. The duct tape is now starting to peel away. So it presents a danger to anybody who falls or rubs against it with the sharp metal that could puncture through and cause some serious damage. So we've been talking about this one for a number of years, and nothing's happened. So that's the primary thing I wanted to speak to. The secondary thing is that since October, and I'm not sure which of those feeders substations I'm on, but since middle of October, my power's gone out 5 times. If you do the math, that's an average of every 23 days my power goes out. Now, of those 5 times, 3 of them were less than the 5-minute reporting period that was spoken to. So I'm positive that JCP&L knows exactly how long the power goes out. But I got to tell you that I fear that this 5-minute reporting threshold is a bit of a fiction to just brush a lot of stuff under the carpet that affects people like me. Because if your power goes out for 15 seconds, you lose your Zoom session or you lose your connectivity, whatever it is. You can't go forward. So the fact that, it's 5 minutes, doesn't really matter. No, that's not true. So we need to get some real world reporting factor back in here. And my very last point, Mr. Mayor, is for you, that when people go to raise their hand in the Zoom session, it's not via the participants button, but it's through the reactions button.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks.
I'll have to check this out again because I was. All right, thank you, Tim. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for that. And just a quick note on the 5-minute and under outages. They are not counted toward reliability issues, toward counting what the reliability is. That's the point. It's not that we don't count them or we don't know that they exist. When I go into my GIS mapping, I know they happened. I know how many outages there are, and I see all of the 30-second and the 1-minute outages. But the point is that equipment that is switching, that equipment that is closing off those bad circuits, that's working. That's working in that moment. And I know it's frustrating. And there are other issues that need to be solved. And we've been hearing this today that potentially it's the underground. And that's something that I'm going to bring back to the engineers and have them look at, just to make sure it isn't. Or if it is, then we need a solution. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Right. And Yolanta, just to make note that we've had 1, 2, 3 speakers, all from Village Green. Village Green was one of the first neighborhoods to be built in the hills. So that's mid-'80s construction. So it's coming up at 40 years. Things are falling apart. They need replacement. And so the patchwork repairs, it's only so long before there's going to be massive failures. And it's just something I think that we've certainly heard tonight. We've heard from the different associations, but those older ones, looking at some of these photos, it's disrepair, and we'll leave this all with you.
Yes, obviously, we've diagnosed nothing today. All we're doing is information gathering. I have no idea if anything is failing. I mean, that's some people's opinion, and that's fine. But, this is something that I need to run through engineering to determine whether or not that's actually happening. Is it possible that it's happening in other places in the state? Sure. Is it possible that it's happening here? Perhaps, but that's not something that I'm aware of, and that's not something that's been tested yet at this point. But that's something that I'm going to bring back, and I'm going to make sure that we do look at it so you don't continue to have these problems. And if they are problems on the feed into your development, well, then those things need to be resolved as well. If we're dealing with overhead issues, well, then we have to resolve those in addition to any underground issues that you may have. However, we haven't diagnosed any underground issues.
Right. And so to the point, but just as we reflected earlier with the Wood Dog Pond situation, it's certainly going to be, just imagine that it's going to be cheaper and easier for JCP&L to implement a replacement scenario rather than reimbursing the associations when they have to go out on an emergency basis and affect the repairs themselves.
Yes.
Ms. Ray, next.
Next, we have Robert Shirley.
Hi, it's Robert Shirley. I see somebody else on my screen. Hope you can hear me. Robert Shirley, Mr. Edgemont Lane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Shirley,
Okay.
Bob, do we just lose?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Address?
1 Edgemont Lane.
What Edgemont? Okay.
Okay. My comments also have to do with the staffing issues. And I'd be interested in knowing what the mean response time is, and also the mean time to restore service. Because it seems whenever there's an outage, it takes 2 hours to get a crew here. And then if that person can't fix it by himself, he's got to call for help, and that can take another couple of hours to get more people on site. And as a result, the minimum power failure is for non-trivial issues is 4 hours. And with the population shifts in the past 30 years, maybe maybe the company could redeploy assets or open another base or something. which would allow them to respond to problems faster. There's two things, you talk about the reliability, but you also need to, when there are failures, you need to be able to respond to them promptly. And I think maybe there's some improvements there. Anyway, I know you're not going to solve that here, but I just wanted to throw that out there. And also thanks to Colin and the mayor for handling all these sort of things. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Shirley. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing up that point, and I will tell you, and the mayor and Committeeman Hickey are both aware of something that happened during the last outage. I think it was the outage in the fall, where it was something that happened in another town, and the reason why the outage took a little bit longer than it should have is we were waiting for traffic control. Traffic control from the other town changed shifts. They were short-staffed. They weren't able to make it. And we had to call our flaggers, but the flaggers don't live right next to the, wherever the site is where we're having our outage. It does take time for people to get where they need to be. We were on a state highway trying to repair the outage. There's no way that we can have a man up in a bucket truck without a crash truck, without flaggers, without law enforcement there to control the traffic. So there are variables that come into what happens during an outage. And sometimes, there are circumstances beyond our control, and sometimes there aren't. But your point is well taken, and that is certainly something that I can bring back to the company.
Okay, thank you. Robin, are we down to the last one?
We are down to our last, I believe it's Alana Morvay.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you to the mayor and the board for calling this meeting. I live in 16 Lockhaven Court in the Norcrest section, and I'm an original owner. And this section was built almost 39 years ago. So that equipment here has to be that old. I heard a lot of issues on this call attributed the power failures to overhead equipment. So I know we have underground equipment in the hills. What I don't understand is there are so many issues with the trees and the squirrel and environmental issues. Is this, I don't know if it is an ignorant question, but can the overhead system be addressed? It looks to me that all 5 of the substations that serve our community, they are all overhead and the power is coming overhead. Is there any other way that can be issued so we would not have these problems? January 6th, it was a Friday. We had the power out from 3:30 until close to 8 o'clock. So it was, I believe, Mark, who is the head of our community here. I thank him to attend and speaking up. It took almost 4 hours to restore that. The last question I have is that it is nice to call these meetings, but I would like to find out whether there will be a follow-up, and if there is, how would the residents know about it? And I'm bringing this up because I recall that I was on a call about 18 months ago with Optimum about the horrible service they had. And if I recall, we had about 260 or 256 people on that call. And if there was any follow-up, I do not know about it. I don't know how I would find out about it. This is a different issue, but since this is a community issue here, the power outages, I would like to see if there would be a follow-up to all these points that were presented to Yolanta. And thank you, Yolanta, for attending this meeting.
Thank you.
And thank you. So one of the things that we did in the past, and if Jerry, you and the 3 other J's, because I believe we had 4 J's on that? Yes. Yeah. So maybe we swap out some of the J's for, Rich and maybe Vincent. Jackie was one of the J's.
Jackie was one of the J's,
Jackie was
yep.
one of the J's. Jackie, Jeff.
There you go.
Right, okay. So let's get someone from Knollcrest on there as well, so that we get Village Green represented and that we convene a committee to work with Committeeman Hickey and Yolanta to report back. And this way, there's reporting not just from Yolanta and JCP&L or from the Township Committee, but it's brought back locally to your condo association.
Happy to attend any of your meetings, let me know.
We'll get it organized.
So at 9:31, we'll take a 5-minute break. Yolanta, thank you so much
Thank you for having me.
showing up.
Thank you so much
And
for
thank
coming.
you
And
to all our
thank you to
residents.
everyone online, thank you.
And for all the others who came out tonight, thank you very much for your participation. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. You do not have to.
I was jealous for a minute, I said, this happens in Bedminster, it never happened in Warren, except that one time.
Only when you guys come.
That's right. You and the cable company.
So Robin,
That's so funny.
Robin,
Yes.
if you could hit stop record.
Yes, absolutely. Nice to meet you finally. Good to see the face behind the